The story begins in 1947. We meet Andy Dufresne, a quiet, successful young banker who seems to have his whole life figured out. But in a single night, everything shatters. Andy is accused of murdering his wife and her lover in a cold, brutal crime. Even though Andy maintains his innocence, the evidence against him looks terrible. The judge shows zero mercy, handing Andy 2 consecutive life sentences. Just like that, a quiet banker is sent to Shawshank State Penitentiary, one of the most ruthless prisons in the country. When Andy steps off the prison bus, the environment is brutal. The guards are vicious, led by a ruthless captain named Byron Hadley. And the warden, Samuel Norton, rules the prison with an iron fist, hiding his cruel nature behind a Bible. To make matters worse, the older inmates take bets on which of the new guys will break down and cry on their very first night. That night, one new inmate breaks down in tears, screaming that he doesn't belong there. Captain Hadley walks up to his cell and beats him so badly that the man dies in the infirmary the next morning. Welcome to Shawshank. It is in this dark place that Andy meets Red, played by Morgan Freeman. Red is a long-term inmate who has been in Shawshank for 20 years. He is the guy who knows how to get things smuggled inside. If you want cigarettes, a deck of cards, or minor tools, Red is your man. Andy approaches Red with a strange request. He doesn't want drugs or weapons. He wants a tiny rock hammer, because he enjoys collecting and shaping rocks. Red is suspicious, thinking Andy might use it to escape. But after seeing how small and harmless the hammer is, Red agrees to get it for him. Later on, Andy also asks Red for a large poster of the movie star Rita Hayworth to hang on his cell wall. For his first 2 years, Andy lives through absolute nightmare conditions. He is targeted by a violent gang of inmates called the Sisters, led by a cruel man named Boggs. They jump Andy in the dark, beating him up and abusing him repeatedly. But Andy never breaks. He always fights back, even though he takes severe beatings for it. He keeps his head down, holding on to his dignity in a place designed to destroy it. Then, in 1949, a huge turning point happens. Andy and a group of inmates, including Red, get picked for a work detail to fix the roof of the prison guardhouse. It is hot, grueling work under the sun. While working, Andy overhears Captain Hadley complaining loudly about the government taking a massive chunk of his inheritance tax. Hadley is furious about losing his money. Most inmates would keep their mouths shut to avoid getting killed. But Andy steps up to Hadley directly. Hadley gets furious, grabs Andy, and holds him over the edge of the roof, threatening to throw him off. But Andy quickly explains that he knows a legal loophole. As a banker, he can help Hadley keep every single penny of that money legally, if Hadley just buys his crew some cold beer. Hadley hesitates, but accepts the deal. A few moments later, Andy's friends are sitting on the roof, drinking cold beer in the middle of the day. Red recalls that moment as one of the most powerful memories of his life. For 20 minutes, they felt like free men again. And Andy? He didn't even drink a beer himself. He just sat in the shade, smiling quietly. After that day on the roof, everything changes for Andy. The guards realize how valuable his banking skills are. Soon, guards from other prisons, and even Warden Norton himself, come to Andy to get their taxes done. To protect their valuable financial advisor, the guards beat up Boggs, the leader of the gang that was harassing Andy. Boggs is sent away, and the Sisters never touch Andy again. Warden Norton moves Andy out of the harsh laundry room and assigns him to the prison library, working under an elderly inmate named Brooks Hatlin. Brooks has been at Shawshank since 1912. Over 50 years. He is gentle, respected, and takes care of a small bird he rescued. Andy decides to use his new position to build a proper library for the inmates. He writes letters every single week to the state government, asking for funding and books. The state ignores him for years, but Andy never gives up. Eventually, the state sends a small check and a box of old donated books and records. While unpacking the box, Andy finds a classical music record. He locks the guards out of the office, turns on the prison broadcast system, and plays a beautiful opera song over the loudspeakers. The music floats across the entire prison yard. Hundreds of hardened criminals stop dead in their tracks, just listening. Red says it felt like a beautiful bird had flown into their dark cage and made the walls disappear. It was a brief moment of pure freedom. The warden is furious, pounding on the door, but Andy just leans back and enjoys the music. He gets 2 weeks in solitary confinement for it, but when he comes back, he tells his friends it was worth every second. Music and hope are things the guards can never take away from you. Time moves on, and in 1954, old Brooks Hatlen gets released on parole after spending 52 years inside. But Brooks is terrified. Shawshank is the only world he knows. Out in the real world, cars are moving fast, everything is overwhelming, and he has no friends. He gets a job at a grocery store, but he can't adapt. He feels completely lost and alone. Tragically, Brooks carves the words, "Brooks was here," into a wooden beam in his small apartment, and takes his own life. When the inmates at Shawshank hear the news, they are heartbroken. Red explains the hard truth about prison life: these walls are funny. First you hate them. Then you get used to them. Enough time passes, you depend on them. That is what it means to be institutionalized. Meanwhile, Warden Norton starts a corrupt work program, using unpaid prison labor for outside construction projects. He takes bribes from private contractors who don't want to compete with free labor. The warden makes hundreds of thousands of dollars in dirty money. And who manages the books? Andy. Andy sets up fake bank accounts using a fake identity, a ghost persona created entirely on paper. If anyone ever investigates, the trail leads to a man who doesn't even exist. Then, in 1965, a young, loud inmate named Tommy Williams arrives at Shawshank. Tommy is a young thief, but Andy takes a liking to him and helps him earn his high school diploma. One day, Tommy hears Andy's story. Tommy turns pale. He reveals that years ago, in another prison, a cellmate bragged to him about murdering a banker's wife and letting the banker take the fall. Andy is stunned. This is the proof he needs. He goes straight to Warden Norton, begging for help to reopen his case. But Norton refuses. He can't afford to let Andy go free, because Andy knows all about the warden's illegal money schemes and dirty books. When Andy gets upset and calls the warden corrupt, Norton loses his mind. He throws Andy into solitary confinement for 2 whole months. And to make sure the truth never comes out, Warden Norton lures young Tommy out into the yard late at night, and has Captain Hadley shoot him dead, making it look like Tommy was trying to escape. When Andy finally gets out of solitary, he is broken and devastated. He meets with Red in the yard and talks about his dream of living in a small coastal town in Mexico called Zihuatanejo. A quiet place by the Pacific Ocean where he can fix up an old boat and run a small hotel. Andy tells Red, "Get busy living, or get busy dying." He makes Red promise him something. If Red ever gets out, he must go to a specific hayfield in a small town called Buxton. Beneath a big oak tree, under a unique piece of black volcanic glass, there is something buried waiting for him. Red gets deeply worried. Andy asks another inmate for a long piece of rope. Red fears that Andy, after losing all hope, is going to end his life in his cell that night. That night, a massive thunderstorm rolls over Shawshank. Lightning flashes and thunder rumbles through the sky. The next morning, during roll call, Andy fails to step out of his cell. The guards run in, and find the cell completely empty. The warden is summoned, screaming in confusion. How could a man disappear from a locked cell? In a fit of rage, the warden throws a rock at the large poster of Raquel Welch hanging on Andy's wall. The rock tears right through the poster. The warden steps up and pulls the poster back. Behind it is a giant, dark tunnel, carved directly through the thick concrete wall. Andy had been using that tiny rock hammer, every single night for 20 years, to slowly chip away at the wall. He hid the dirt in his pockets, scattering it in the yard during his morning walks. On the night of the storm, Andy crawled through the tunnel. He broke into a main sewage pipe, using the thunderclaps to mask the noise as he smashed the pipe open with a stone. Andy crawled through 500 yards of filthy sewage, a distance equal to 5 football fields, smelling foulness beyond imagination. But when he popped out on the other side into the river, the rain washed him clean. He tore off his clothes and threw his arms up in the storm. Andy Dufresne was free. The next morning, before the prison even realizes what happened, Andy walks into several banks in town wearing a clean suit and polished shoes. He withdraws all of Warden Norton's dirty money, over $300,000, using the fake identity he created. Before leaving town, Andy mails the prison's corrupt financial ledgers directly to the local newspaper. Police cars and state troopers swarm Shawshank. Captain Hadley is arrested on the spot, bursting into tears. And as the police break down Warden Norton's door, the warden looks at a framed wall art in his office that reads, "His judgment cometh, and that right soon." Realizing he is completely ruined, Norton pulls a gun out of his desk and ends his own life. Sometime later, after 40 long years inside, Red finally gets paroled. He steps out into the world, but like Brooks, he finds it overwhelming and lonely. He works at the same grocery store and stays in the exact same room where Brooks died. Red looks up at the wooden beam where "Brooks was here" is carved. He considers ending it all, too. But then, he remembers his promise to Andy. Red buys a bus ticket and travels to Buxton. He walks across the green fields until he finds the giant oak tree, just like Andy described. He digs under the black volcanic stone and finds a small metal box. Inside, there is a stack of cash and a letter from Andy. The letter reads, "Remember, Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies." Andy tells him to come to Mexico if he's ready. Red takes out his pocket knife. Right next to "Brooks was here," he carves, "So was Red." Red breaks his parole, packs a bag, and gets on a bus heading south. For the first time in his life, he feels true, unbridled hope. He travels all the way down to Mexico, to the shores of Zihuatanejo. As Red walks along the golden beach, he sees an old boat sitting on the sand. A man is kneeling nearby, working on it. The man stops, stands up, and turns around. It's Andy. They look at each other, smiling warmly, and embrace under the bright blue sky. Two free men, finally reunited. What a powerful story about patience, justice, and the unstoppable power of hope. If you enjoyed this journey, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dive movie stories. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one.